Welcome to Successfully Ambiguous, the podcast that asks, when opportunity knocks, will you be ready to answer? I'm Christine Brooks Cappadocia. Our guest today is Erick Bauer, expert communicator, university instructor, podcaster, host, and author. He's founder of the principal of the Bauer Group and head of external relations at Meridian Credit Union. So let's open the door and meet Erick. Hi, Erick. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. Very excited.
It's always exciting to talk to another communicator, particularly one with another podcast. And you're doing so many things, right? You've got your job with Meridian, where you're leading the branding there. You're teaching for the School of Continuing Studies. You've got the podcast. I hear there's a new book on the horizon. Of course, your company as well. How are you juggling all of that?
That's a good question. Sometimes successfully, sometimes not so successfully. So I think I am very much kind of an A-type personality. So I like to take on a lot, sometimes too much. I think sometimes the plate is a little too full, but you know what? I like to kind of, think big and be involved in new projects. I always like to have a couple things on the go. So it's in my nature. And I like to keep busy. So for better or for worse, that's just kind of my personality, and it's served me well so far. So I'm sticking to it.
Listeners may not realize this, but you've had a very non-linear career path as well. And that's one of the things we explore in this series. I understand you started out in police foundations before moving into communications, and then had a pathway, like a lot of our learners, where they are continually going back and refreshing skills.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's one of the things that I tell my students all the time is I think it's more rare to have a very linear career path these days. Most people come into a job or a career having had previous experience or having worked in different sectors. For me, I graduated from high school very much committed to becoming a police officer. From there, I went to Centennial College. I did a certificate program in police foundations. I graduated, was hired by the Toronto Police Service, and I worked with them for about a year before deciding that policing just wasn't for me. So it was a real period of transition in my life. I kind of reassessed what I wanted out of a career, where I was, personally, and I made the decision to actually go back to school, and I became a student at York. So actually enrolled and did my undergrad at York in sociology. And from there was exposed to some courses in business, some courses in marketing. And that's where I started to learn a little more about communications and public relations as a career path. So I credit my time, at York to kind of exposing me to, some of the thoughts that really kind of led to my career progression and where I am today in communication.
It takes a courage to rethink and say, something isn't fully working for me. How can I bring this? And I can see a logical connection between police services and then moving into sociology, because you do see parts of humanity that you see us, police officers see us when we often need extra help. Right?
Yeah, you know what? It's funny. I see a real connection with policing, sociology, but also with communications. I think when I look at my personality, I'm a problem solver. I like to help people. I like to, take complex issues and kind of distill them down and find simplified ways to, communicate those issues back to certain target audiences or publics. So in a lot of ways, there are dynamics that I think connect policing, sociology, and communications. And I think that's one of the reasons why I've been able to kind of seamlessly transition from, one career path to the next over the course of the 15 years that I've been working in this industry.
Well, and you hit the ground running in communications. I understand you won the CPRS Student of the Year award early on.
I did, yeah. I was very lucky. I had some really great mentors during my time as a student, as I was learning about the industry. And I think, again, this is advice that I give to my students as well, but I was really committed to growing my personal brand. And the way that I kind of looked at it as a student was that my job was to build my personal brand so that when I graduated from my postgraduate course in corporate communications, I was ready to sort of hit the ground running and take on that first role. So I really treated my time, doing my post grad as an opportunity to learn, to really build my professional network, but also to build my own personal brand. And obviously, I was recognized for doing that by CPRS with that Student of the Year award that you mentioned. But I think ultimately the real benefit of that period was that I came out of my post grad with a great internship opportunity that ended up leading to my first full-time role, and I actually ended up then sort of jumping into the agency world from there, and the rest is kind of history.
You've paid that forward as an instructor too. I understand you connected, was it Bhupender Singh with the work you do at Meridian, and now he's launched his career in the financial services sector in Canada.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the most rewarding parts of my role as an instructor at York has been being able to really help students transition from, academia to the professional landscape. And I've been lucky enough to hire a couple of students from the program. I've also referred several students who have been hired by different companies. Obviously, I have a relatively large network in the Canadian communications landscape. So it's been great. It's been a great way for me to meet really dynamic, inspired young professionals. And when I see folks like that, obviously my intuition is to support them, to help them, and to try to ensure that they get their foot in the door and are able to establish that kind of critical first role in the industry.
One of the things we often hear from students, less often so those from the School of Continuing Studies, because they tend to be very driven and dynamic, and they've got this support network of instructors like you who have connections to industry and leverage those connections. In finding questions for this podcast, people are asking me a lot of things like, I keep sending out my resumes. I'm sending out, 10 resumes a day and getting no callbacks. A lot of it is connections and a lot of it is strategy. For those that don't have the benefit of being connected to an instructor like you, what advice might you give those job hunters?
Yeah, it's a great question. And again, I think, it's a very competitive landscape out there for job hunters, I think, regardless of what industry you're going into. And I think the advice that I give to students is advice that is, applicable to any industry. And that advice is basically just sending out your resume, or sort of, applying to roles through LinkedIn. That's just not enough anymore. You really have to think of it as your role is to build your personal brand. You've got to connect with people. You've got to find ways to build your professional network, which is, I think, anxiety provoking for a lot of students, right? Many of them specifically, in the post-secondary programs at York, maybe English is not their first language. Maybe they're international students. They don't have, connections in Canada, yet alone in the industry that they are looking to kind of grow into. But I would say that, I have seen so many success stories where students have sort of used LinkedIn as a network to build connections. They've been really courageous in terms of reaching out, asking for coffee chats, asking for just, one-on-one introductory meetings. And I think those are the types of conversations and those are the types of relationships that are going to help you get that critical first role. Because when I look at even myself at Meridian, when we put a role out on LinkedIn, for example, instantaneously there are just hundreds of applicants. So it's so difficult to set yourself apart from the herd if you don't have some type of connection in-house. And even if that connection is just a coffee chat, you get to know someone, you have an informal discussion with them. Those are really, really crucial parts of the job hunting process. And the advice I would give to students is don't overtly frame it as you trying to land a job. It's more about you building relationships. So when you reach out to someone, don't necessarily tell them that you're looking for a role or that you're looking for an internship. Say, I'd love to learn about the industry. I'd love to connect with you, learn about your career trajectory, what you see as being, interesting or important in the industry right now. And you want to connect with people, build relationships, and obviously by virtue of that, they're going to be aware that you're looking for a role. And therefore, when they are hiring or when people in their network are hiring, you want them to go, okay, I know a great person who would be a great fit for that role.
No, absolutely. And I'm thinking about the time you spent at CPRS. I came into communications a little later after being a artist for a while. And when I took on my first communications department and they were offering it and I went, oh, sure, I'll do that. And then I had to go, okay, I know nothing about communications. What do I do? I reached out to a professional association as well. Both CPRS and IABC have been big parts of my life. And just found this network that could help me learn everything I needed to know and the people I needed to know to bring my career forward.
Yeah, I would say that's a great call out. I mean, I've been involved with CPRS and IABC in many different capacities throughout the course of my career. And certainly I encourage all of my students to look into the resources that they have available. And certainly, the student memberships that both organizations offer are so valuable. And I mean, I understand that everyone has financial constraints, but for both CPRS and IABC, you can literally join as a student member for, probably the amount of money that you spend on coffee over the course of a month. So it's very reasonable. And again, it's so valuable, but it's also kind of like, joining a gym. So if you get a gym membership and you don't use it and you don't go, or you go once every few weeks, you're not going to see the results. But if you commit to being involved, to reaching out, to connecting with people, going to the events, going to the networking sessions, completing the educational resources that they have available, that's how you get the most bang for your buck. And I think the other thing that I would just mention with both of those organizations is, if you are able to find someone who is a member of CPRS or IABC, you know by virtue of their membership that they are open to helping people, grow their careers in the profession. So those are great opportunities for young students to reach out, connect, and have those early discussions that can help them grow their network and hopefully, again, help them land that crucial first role.
Such great advice. And I'd add, and volunteer when there's an event,
Yeah.
step forward, particularly if you're a little bit shy and don't know what to talk to people about or how to open the door. Doing a project alongside somebody is a great way to get to know them.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's a huge one. And I think, I was a chair of CPRS Toronto for a period of time, and we were always looking for volunteers. And also, we had students who were coming to us with ideas and proposals to volunteer. And of course, we would say, yes, that sounds great. Like, we're looking for all the help that we can get. So those opportunities exist. You just have to be proactive.
Yeah, absolutely. And transferable well beyond just the comms world. Every profession has a gathering of like minds of some sort, and we tend to get together. So I read on social media that a challenge you put out to think about the kind of Canada we want to build. Tell me about your goal to have us reimagine a Canada that we want to leave behind.
Yeah, I think, it's a very important topic. Obviously, you alluded to the LinkedIn post that I shared with, well, my daughter, my young daughter. So I have two children. My son turned 8 actually yesterday. My daughter will be 6 this year. Yeah. So obviously, when you're a young father and a young parent, you look at the world very differently. And with everything that's going on these days, I think geopolitically, the way that we are, thinking about Canada when it comes to innovation, when it comes to immigration, when it comes to, how we're dealing with many critical issues, I think we're at a real critical point in terms of, how we are reimagining Canada. And I am very aware of the fact that there is a lot happening in the world right now, but I also want to ensure that my children grow up in the type of country that I believe is, still one of the best in the world. So I think, looking at opportunities to ensure that we are leaving a sort of a world for our children that is going to be one where they can succeed, where they can grow, they can develop, from an educational perspective, where they can really go to a university or go to college at a best in class institution where they can learn skills, whether that's white collar skills or skilled trades, whatever the case may be, and where they can basically find a way to attain the skills that are going to be needed to have a successful career, maybe start families of their own, and build a life that is meaningful. And I think there's a lot happening with AI that is disrupting different industries, and so I have a lot of kind of anxiety and apprehension about what that will look like for them in 10, 15, 20 years. And I think it's crucial that we do the work now and we start thinking about these complex problems and start coming up with solutions that will allow the next generation, to have success.
Absolutely. And I can see that you're building the Canada you want to leave behind in, your volunteer work, the fact that you're teaching. No one teaches in continuing studies to get to be wealthy. You do it to give back and build the profession and the next generation. I am curious about your transition. It's one thing to write corporate comms pieces, and write lessons and write branding pieces. It's a whole other thing to write your own story. And you've got a book coming out. Tell me a little bit about it and what that process was like. It's got to be different to write from your own point of view.
Yeah, it's been a journey, absolutely. So, I mean, for the listeners here, so I was born with cystic fibrosis. Cystic fibrosis is a genetic condition that affects your lungs, your pancreas, and it's been something that has really affected my life deeply. It's a chronic condition. It's a fatal condition, unfortunately, although there's been a lot of progress in terms of research and treatment. But still, individuals who are born with cystic fibrosis today, the life expectancy is still somewhere in sort of the mid 60s. Whereas when I was born, individuals with cystic fibrosis were only expected to live to kind of, in and around 20 years of age. So it's something that has always had a, big impact on my mind and my life, obviously. And I've learned a lot as I've gone through, different stages in my life. I think you learn to be resilient, you learn to be very gritty, obviously, and you learn to deal with challenge in a very different way than most people. So when it came to wanting to sort of tell my story, I think a lot of it was based on the fact, as I mentioned earlier, that I have two young kids. And I think for me, the genesis of the book was being able to kind of tell my story and share my story, number one, so that when they're a little older, they can read it and understand, what their dad has gone through. But also the sort of tertiary goal was to help young people who are, living with cystic fibrosis today and giving them some hope, giving them a little bit of inspiration and, allowing them to look at someone who I guess in some cases has kind of defied the odds, right? So again, I'm mentioning when I was born, life expectancy being, in the early 20s. I'm 40 years old now, right? So I own a home, I've got an MBA, I have a career, I'm married, I've got two children. The path has not been easy, but I think if you are, someone who's living with this illness now, and you can look at someone who's gone through that and is still successful to this day, I think that's very inspiring. And I know for myself, I had a lot of people that I looked up to as a young CF patient, and it was just so crucial as I navigated, life with the disease. So that is what the book is all about. It's my journey with CF, and it's been something that I've been working on for the better part of probably a decade, in all honesty. So the process has been very interesting, very challenging, but also, very rewarding as well.
Well, and I think it'll offer a lot of hope, and hope in the broadest sense of the word, right? Hope is not necessarily always Pollyannic. It's broad and it's encompassing both the highs and the lows and the movement forward. And the fact that you've achieved such great success in both your health outcomes, but also your career, and your family life. You're building the world we want to see. And I really appreciate you finding so many different ways to give forward pay it forward and give back to this community.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I think, that really is my goal. And I think that, with regards to the book, I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned, not just for those with CF, but for anybody out there. And again, everybody, fights their own battle. And sometimes those battles are very much, things that we keep behind the curtain, so to speak. So, lessons in resilience, lessons in overcoming adversity and being gritty. Again, as I mentioned, those are all things that we can, I think, all universally relate to. So, yeah, I'm excited for that to come out later this year.
And the other project I want to touch on is the podcast, which has been the bottom line with Erick Bauer. So many great guests, many communicators focusing on the power of storytelling. And I'm now listening to it as somebody who does less and less formal communications in their role. It's communications is clearly part of, and storytelling part of every job ever.
Yeah.
And I really want to encourage listeners to go find it on Spotify, find it on your favorite podcast app, because it is a really good listen.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and thank you for the plug. I think the irony, we were talking a little bit about stepping outside of your comfort zone and building your personal network. And the reason why I started the podcast was that I found myself, I'm so busy, and obviously we're living in this kind of hybrid remote first environment. And I found that I just wasn't having those conversations with people in the industry the way that I used to. And so for me, this was almost like forced networking in a way. It was a way for me to get, regular calls on my calendar where I would be chatting with folks, both in communication, but in other industries as well. And again, just growing my professional network, reconnecting with people that I maybe hadn't been in touch with for long periods of time. So, I think it goes to show that even if you've been in the industry for 10, 15, 20 years, you never stop networking, you never stop building those connections, because they are crucially important regardless of where you are in your career trajectory.
Well, and it's a wonderful insight into what some of the giants of the industry have been through. Thinking about Martin and Terry, you've had some great guests on there. So I want to thank you. Speaking of great guests, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I've really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much for coming on, Erick.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of Successfully Ambiguous. Be sure to leave your comments below or find me on LinkedIn to ask your career questions. Like or subscribe so you never miss an episode. And join us for the next episode so that when opportunity knocks, you'll be ready to answer.